I am 72 years old and I thought I knew everything about my son Daniel. For 72 years I have watched people, learned their patterns, understood their silences. I raised Daniel alone after his father died when he was just 8 years old. I thought I could read every shadow that crossed his face, every burden he carried. I was wrong. It began on a Wednesday morning in September. Daniel called to tell me he would be traveling to Philadelphia for a business conference. 5 days, he said in that flat voice he had developed over the years. The company needs me there for strategic planning sessions. Can you watch over Sarah while I am gone? Course, I told him. Travel safe, sweetheart. Sarah arrived at my door 2 hours later. My granddaughter was 16 years old, brilliant and observant like her father used to be before life hardened him. But something was different in her face that morning. Something tight and angry and afraid all at once. "Grandma Helen," she said, pushing past me into my small living room. "We need to talk about Dad right now." I closed the door slowly, my heart already beginning to race with a grandmother's intuition that something was terribly wrong. "What is it, sweetheart? What happened?" "Dad does not travel for business," Sarah said flatly. "He has been lying to both of us for months." She pulled out her phone and thrust it toward me. On the screen was a bank statement, Daniel's credit card charges from what I could see. My hands trembled slightly as I took the phone from her. "Look at the dates," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "Every single charge from his last 3 trips. Not Philadelphia. Not Boston. Not any of the cities he told us. All the charges are from Lancaster. He has been going to Lancaster, Grandma, for 8 months straight." I stared at the screen, at the restaurants and gas stations and stores, all clearly marked with Lancaster addresses. My son had been lying to us. Consistently. Deliberately. For 8 months. "There is more," Sarah continued, scrolling through the statement with quick, angry movements. "Look at these charges. Medical supply stores. Pharmacies. Hospital cafeterias. Grandma, I think Dad is sick. I think he has been seeing doctors and hiding it from us because he does not want us to worry." The room seemed to tilt slightly. I sat down heavily in my armchair, the same chair where I had rocked Daniel to sleep as a baby, where I had comforted him after his father died, where I had held Sarah when her mother walked out on them both when Sarah was only 5 years old. "We need to ask him," I said finally, though even as I spoke the words I knew they were wrong. "No," Sarah said firmly. "He will just lie again, Grandma. He has been lying for 8 months. We need to find out the truth ourselves. We need to follow him." The idea made my stomach clench with discomfort and guilt. Spying on my own son felt like a betrayal of everything I had taught him about trust and honesty and family. But he had broken that trust first, had he not? For 8 months he had been living some kind of secret life, and neither his mother nor his daughter had known. "All right," I heard myself say. "Next time he travels, we follow him." Daniel called again that evening. "Chicago this time," he said. 4 days starting Monday. "Can you stay with Sarah?" "Of course," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. "Be safe, sweetheart." After I hung up, I sat alone in my living room staring at the family photos on my mantel. Daniel at his college graduation. His face full of hope and possibility. Daniel on his wedding day before everything fell apart. Daniel holding newborn Sarah. His expression showing such fierce protective love that it had made me cry. Who was my son? What had transformed him from that hopeful young man into someone who could lie so easily, so completely? The questions haunted me through the weekend. I tried to convince myself there might be an innocent explanation. Perhaps he really was ill and did not want to burden us. Perhaps there was some perfectly reasonable explanation for 8 months of deception. But deep in my gut, where a mother's intuition lives, I knew it was something worse. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. Sarah and I sat in my car parked down the street from Daniel's house, watching as he loaded his overnight bag into his sedan. He waved toward his house, assuming Sarah was inside, then drove away. We followed at a careful distance, Sarah navigating with her phone. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Everything about this felt wrong, invasive, paranoid. But Sarah's determined expression kept me focused. Daniel did not head toward the airport. He took Route 30 east exactly as the credit card statement had suggested, straight toward Lancaster. I knew it, Sarah whispered beside me. We followed him for over an hour through Pennsylvania farmland, past Amish buggies and rolling fields, into the outskirts of Lancaster. Daniel navigated the streets with the ease of someone who had made this journey many times before. Finally, he pulled into the parking lot of Lancaster Regional Medical Center. So I was right, Sarah said quietly. He is sick. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. My son, my only child, facing some terrible illness alone. But why? Why would he hide this from us? We should go home, I said softly. Let him handle this with dignity and privacy. No, Sarah said, her voice hard. Something else is happening. Can feel it, Grandma. This is not just about being sick. She was right. Could feel it too. That electric sense that we had only begun to uncover whatever Daniel was hiding. We waited in the parking lot for 2 hours. When Daniel finally emerged from the hospital, his face was drawn and exhausted, his eyes red. But instead of returning to his car and leaving, he sat in the driver's seat for a long time with his head bowed. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Even from our distance I could see the agitation in his gestures, the way his free hand moved in sharp, distressed motions. The call lasted 15 minutes. When it ended, Daniel sat motionless for another 5 minutes, as if gathering strength for something. Then he drove deeper into Lancaster, into a neighborhood of small, worn houses with chain-link fences and cars in various states of disrepair. The kind of neighborhood where people worked multiple jobs and still struggled to make rent. Daniel pulled up in front of a small yellow house with peeling paint and a wheelchair ramp leading to the front door. Grandma, Sarah grabbed my arm. What is this? Who lives here? We watched in silence as my son pulled 3 full grocery bags from his trunk and carried them up that ramp. He did not knock. He used a key from his pocket and let himself inside. The door closed behind him and Sarah and I sat frozen in my car, staring at that small yellow house with its sagging gutters and overgrown yard. What is Dad doing? Sarah whispered. Who are these people? I could not answer because I did not know. But I knew with a bone-deep certainty that whatever we had just discovered would change everything. Some secret so significant that my son had been willing to lie for 8 months straight. We sat in that car for nearly an hour, watching the house as if it might reveal its secrets through the walls. Sarah kept checking her phone nervously. I kept my hands on the steering wheel, using it as an anchor to reality. When Daniel finally emerged, he was not alone. A woman came to the door with him, early 30s perhaps, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and exhaustion written in every line of her face. She touched Daniel's arm as they spoke, and even from our distance I could see the deep gratitude in her expression. Daniel nodded, said something that made her smile weakly, then walked back to his car and drove away. Follow him, Sarah asked. No, I said. We need to find out who lives in that house. We waited 10 minutes after Daniel left, then approached the house on foot. My heart hammered against my ribs as Sarah and I walked up that wheelchair ramp. Up close, the house looked even more desperate. Paint peeling in long strips, one window cracked and covered with plastic, the mailbox hanging loose. I knocked and waited. The woman who answered was the same one we had seen with Daniel. Up close I could see the purple shadows under her eyes, the weariness that went deeper than simple fatigue. This was a woman carrying impossible burdens. Yes, she said, her voice weary and tired. I am sorry to bother you, I said carefully. My name is Helen. I am Daniel Garrett's mother. The transformation was immediate and dramatic. Her face went white, then flushed red. God, no. He promised. He said no one would ever find out. She gripped the doorframe. Please, you cannot tell anyone. Please. He has been so good to us. If his company finds out, if his boss discovers what he has been doing. Wait, I held up my hand. I am not here to cause trouble. I just need to understand what is happening. Why is my son bringing you groceries? Why does he have a key to your house? The woman's eyes filled with tears. You really do not know. I do not know anything, I said quietly. But I need to. She hesitated, looking back into the dim interior of the house. Then she stepped aside. You should come in. But please, please do not make this worse for him. He is already paying such a terrible price. The inside of the house was clean but sparse. Second-hand furniture, bare walls, a sense of people living with only the absolute essentials. In the corner of the living room sat a small wheelchair with a stuffed rabbit strapped to one armrest. My name is Jennifer Collins, the woman said, gesturing for us to sit on a worn sofa. Your son has been helping us for the past 8 months since my son's accident. What accident? Sarah asked, her voice tight. Jennifer's face crumpled. My son Marcus was hit by a car. Hit and run. He was walking home from the park and someone came around the corner too fast. Hit him and just drove away. Left my baby lying in the street with a broken spine and internal injuries. Horror washed through me, cold and complete. I'm so sorry. But I do not understand what this has to do with Daniel. Jennifer wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Your son works for Titan Distribution, right? As a senior operations manager. Yes, I said slowly. His boss is Robert Morrison, CO. Jennifer's voice went flat and dead. Robert Morrison is the man who hit my son. The room seemed to spin. Sarah grabbed my hand, her fingers ice cold. That is impossible, I said. If you know who hit your son, why is he not in jail? Because there is no proof, Jennifer said bitterly. The accident happened at 5:15 in the evening on January 23rd. Marcus remembers a dark blue Range Rover. He remembers the license plate started with the letters TDX. He remembers the driver's face. Middle-aged man, gray hair, expensive suit. That is Robert Morrison's car. His appearance exactly. But when the police investigated, his car had no damage. He had an alibi. Said he was in a board meeting at the office and had multiple witnesses. Let me guess, Sarah said coldly. One of those witnesses was my father. Jennifer nodded slowly. Your father was at that meeting. He backed up Morrison's alibi. Told police Morrison never left the conference room. But about 2 weeks later, Daniel showed up here. He told me the truth. Morrison did leave the meeting. Was gone for almost an hour. Came back sweating and shaken. Daniel heard him on the phone with someone, arranging emergency repairs for front-end damage from hitting a deer. When Daniel put it together with the news about Marcus, he knew. He confronted Morrison, and I could barely force the word out. Morrison said if Daniel kept quiet, he would make him vice president of operations. Triple his salary. Stock options. The promotion Daniel had been working toward for 10 years. Jennifer's voice shook. And if Daniel did not keep quiet, Morrison would destroy him. He has connections everywhere. Police, lawyers, judges. He said he would make sure Daniel never worked again. Said he would dig up dirt on Daniel's divorce, use it to take custody of Sarah. Sarah made a small wounded sound beside me. So Daniel took the deal, Jennifer continued. And then he could not live with himself. He started coming here. Bringing food, paying our medical bills, helping with Marcus's therapy expenses. He has been trying to make up for what he did. But it is destroying him from the inside. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process this nightmare. My son, my ethical principled son, had lied to protect a hit-and-run driver who had left a child paralyzed. He had done it for money, for career advancement, for fear of losing Sarah. And then he had compounded the lie by trying to fix it with secret charity, as if groceries and paid bills could balance the scales of justice. Where is Marcus now? I asked quietly. Physical therapy, Jennifer said. 3 times a week. He will never walk normally again. The damage to his spine is permanent. He is 7 years old and he will need a wheelchair for the rest of his life. She could not finish. The words dissolved into tears. Emily stood abruptly. We need to go to the police. My father needs to tell the truth. No, Jennifer jumped up, panic flooding her face. Please no. If Daniel recants his statement, Morrison will retaliate. He will hurt your father, hurt you, hurt me and Marcus even more. And without physical evidence on Morrison's car, it will just be Daniel's word against his. The police will not reopen the case. All we will accomplish is making everything worse. So we do nothing. Sarah's voice rose with anger and frustration. We just let this monster get away with crippling a 7-year-old boy. We are not doing nothing, I said slowly, my mind beginning to work through possibilities. But Sarah, Jennifer is right. We cannot just charge in blindly. Morrison has too much power, too many connections. We need to be smart about this. We need to be strategic. Your father is already being smart, I continued. 8 months of bank statements showing payments to this family. A pattern of behavior that proves he knew something was wrong. That is evidence, Sarah. We just need to figure out how to use it. Jennifer was shaking her head frantically. Please do not involve us in anything dangerous. Marcus has been through enough. We cannot risk making Morrison angry. Cannot. The sound of a key in the lock froze us all. The door opened and a man walked in, early 30s, wearing a construction worker's uniform with dried mud on his boots. He stopped when he saw us, his eyes immediately going to Jennifer. Who are these people? David, this is Daniel's mother and daughter, Jennifer said quickly. Get out, the man said, his voice hard as stone. We want nothing to do with his family. David, please, Jennifer started. We drove back home in heavy silence. The September afternoon sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that seemed obscene given what we had just learned. When I pulled up to my house, Sarah turned to me with tears streaming down her face. What do we do, Grandma? How do we fix this? We talk to your father, I said. We tell him we know everything. And then we figure out the truth together. All of it. What if there is more? Sarah whispered. What if this is not the only terrible secret? The question hit me like ice water in my veins. What if there was more? Jennifer had said Daniel was paying such a terrible price. She had said Morrison would hurt Daniel if he talked. What else was my son hiding? As if in answer, my phone buzzed with a text message from Daniel. Home tomorrow evening. Need to talk to you both. Very important. Love you. Sarah saw the message too. He knows, she said. Somehow he knows we found out. Or, I thought with growing dread, he is ready to tell us something even worse. I looked at my quiet house, at the porch light glowing warmly, at the familiar shape of the home where I had raised my son to be honest and brave and good. Where had I gone wrong? Or had I not gone wrong at all? Had I simply failed to prepare him for how cruel the world could be? How easily good people could be corrupted when faced with impossible choices? Tomorrow, I said firmly. We will hear what he has to say. And then we will decide what to do. But even as I said the words, I knew that whatever Daniel revealed tomorrow would shatter what remained of our family's foundation. The yellow house in Lancaster had been just the beginning. There was something more. Something that scared Daniel enough to reach out first. Something that was about to tear our lives apart. Daniel arrived at my house the next evening looking like he had aged 10 years overnight. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow with dark circles beneath them. When he embraced me, I could feel how much weight he had lost. The jacket that had fit him perfectly last month now hung loose on his frame. Mom, he said, his voice cracking with emotion. Sarah, I need to tell you something before you hear it from anyone else. We sat in my living room, the three of us arranged around the coffee table like we were holding a funeral. In a way, I supposed we were. The Daniel we thought we knew was already gone. Now we were just waiting to see what remained. I know about Marcus Collins, I said quietly. Sarah and I followed you to Lancaster. We talked to Jennifer. Daniel's face went white, then red. Then he simply crumpled forward with his head in his hands. God, Mom. I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this. How did you want us to find out? Sarah asked, her voice like ice. At your funeral. After you died keeping Morrison's dirty secret. Daniel's head snapped up. What? You're sick, Sarah said. The hospital visits. The medical supply charges on your credit card. You think we are stupid? For a long moment Daniel just stared at her in confusion. Then impossibly he laughed. A broken, desperate sound that made my skin crawl. You think I am sick? That is what you thought. He stopped, pressing his palms against his eyes.
Well,
No, Sarah, I am not sick. God, I wish it were that simple. I wish it were just cancer or something I could fight with treatment. This is so much worse. Then why were you at the hospital? I demanded. I was visiting someone, Daniel said, taking a shuddering breath. Someone who tried to do the right thing and nearly died for it. Mom, there is so much more to this than Marcus Collins. So much worse. And I need to tell you now because in about 6 hours everything is going to explode and our lives will never be the same. The fear in his voice made my blood run cold. What are you talking about? Daniel pulled out his phone, scrolled through it with shaking hands, then set it on the coffee table facing us. On the screen was a news article. Federal investigation into Titan distribution. Anonymous tip alleges massive fraud and tax evasion. The article was dated today, published just 3 hours ago. Morrison's company is going down, Daniel said flatly. The FBI received an anonymous tip 4 weeks ago about massive financial fraud. Fake invoices, shell companies, offshore accounts, tax evasion schemes going back 7 years. They have been investigating quietly, but this morning the story leaked to the press. By tonight federal agents will be at our offices with warrants. By tomorrow morning Morrison will be arrested. Sarah leaned forward. Did you send the tip to the FBI? No, Daniel's laugh was bitter. I wish I had that kind of courage. No, someone else at the company figured it out and reported it. But here is the thing, Mom. I have known about the fraud for almost a year. Since before Marcus's accident. Morrison brought me in on it when he promoted me to senior manager. Said it was standard practice, that everyone at the executive level was optimizing their tax burden this way. Made it sound like normal business. My hands clenched in my lap. You have been helping him commit fraud. I have been documenting it, Daniel said quickly. Every fake invoice, every offshore transfer, every falsified report. I kept copies of everything. I stored them in a safety deposit box at First Federal Bank. I was building a case. I was going to use it somehow. Turn him in or use it as leverage to make him confess about Marcus. I kept telling myself I was waiting for the right moment, but really I was just a coward. Too afraid to act. Too afraid of losing everything. And now someone else acted first, I said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. Which means Morrison knows the FBI is coming, Daniel continued. Which means he is desperate and dangerous. This morning he called me. Said he needs someone to take the fall for the fraud. He has been moving money around, creating a paper trail that leads straight to me. He has forged emails, doctored documents, testimony from other executives he has paid off or threatened. When the FBI shows up, they will think I masterminded the entire fraud scheme. I will go to prison for 20 years for crimes he committed. That is insane, Sarah said, jumping to her feet. You have proof he is behind it. You have all those documents in your safety deposit box. Had, Daniel said, his voice breaking completely. I went to the bank this morning. My safety deposit box was opened 3 days ago. Not by me. Everything inside is gone. The bank records show my signature and my identification, but it was not me. Morrison must have bribed someone, forged credentials somehow. All my evidence is gone. Everything I spent a year collecting. Then you tell the FBI the truth, I said firmly. You explain what Morrison did. They will not believe me, Daniel said. Do you not see? Morrison has been setting this up for months, maybe longer. He knew I was keeping records. He knew I was a liability after I found out about Marcus. He has been planning to destroy me all along, and I walked right into his trap like an idiot. The room fell silent except for the ticking of my grandfather clock. Daniel looked at us with eyes full of despair and resignation and defeat. There is more, he said quietly. The person I was visiting at the hospital. Her name is Lisa Brennan. She used to be Morrison's chief financial officer. 4 months ago she tried to report the fraud to the Securities and Exchange Commission. 1 week later she was in a hit-and-run accident just like Marcus. Only she was hurt much worse. Traumatic brain injury, multiple surgeries, months of rehabilitation. She is still in the hospital relearning how to speak and walk. Horror washed over me in cold waves. Morrison tried to kill her. Cannot prove it, Daniel said. But yes, I am certain he did. When I heard about Lisa's accident, when I saw the same pattern as Marcus, I knew. I knew Morrison was capable of anything. That is when I started visiting her, paying for her medical care beyond what insurance covered. Her family could not afford it and I felt responsible. I had seen what he did to Marcus and said nothing. I could not let him destroy another life without at least trying to help. So you have been paying for 2 families, Sarah said slowly. Marcus's therapy and Lisa's medical care. That is why you have been emptying your savings account. That is why you are driving a 10-year-old car and living in that tiny apartment. Daniel nodded. I thought if I could just help them financially. If I could at least do that much, it would mean something. But it does not mean anything. Marcus is still in a wheelchair. Lisa still cannot remember her own children's names. And now Morrison is going to send me to prison for crimes he committed while he walks away free and rich and powerful. No, my voice came out harder than I intended. No, he is not going to get away with this, Daniel. Mom, you do not understand. Morrison has lawyers and connections and money. He has judges and politicians in his pocket. He is untouchable. Nobody is untouchable, I said. Daniel, listen to me. Did Lisa ever tell you anything about the fraud? Does she remember anything that could help us? She is barely coherent, Mom. The brain injury destroyed her memory and cognitive function. Does she have any records? Press. Anything she might have kept before she tried to report Morrison? Daniel hesitated. I do not know. Maybe. Her husband mentioned once that Lisa used to keep personal copies of important documents as insurance. But I never asked for details. What would be the point? The point is that we are not giving up, I said firmly. Sarah, get my purse and car keys. Daniel, you are taking me to see Lisa Brennan right now. Mom, she cannot help. She can barely string together a coherent sentence. She kept documents as insurance, I interrupted. That means she knew Morrison was dangerous. That means she was protecting herself and possibly her family. We are going to find out what she knew and what she kept. Get up. We are leaving right now. Daniel stared at me like I had lost my mind. You cannot just march into a hospital and interrogate a brain injury patient. This is not some small-town mystery you can solve, Mom. This is federal prison. This is the FBI. This is serious. And you have the truth, I said. You have me. You have Sarah. Get up, Daniel. For a moment I thought he would refuse. Then something shifted in his face. Some flicker of the boy I had raised. The one who had believed his mother could fix anything. He stood up. We drove to Lancaster in Daniel's car. Sarah in the back seat with her phone out researching federal fraud cases and whistleblower protection laws. I sat beside Daniel, watching him grip the steering wheel with white-knuckled intensity. Why are you helping me? He asked suddenly. I lied to you for 8 months. I protected a man who crippled a child. I am a coward and probably a criminal. Why are you not disgusted with me? You are my son, I said simply. Yes, you made terrible choices. Yes, you were a coward when you should have been brave. But you made those choices out of fear, not malice. And now you are going to make better choices. We all are. Together. The rehabilitation hospital was a low brick building surrounded by carefully maintained gardens. Daniel led us through the lobby to the long-term care wing where a nurse greeted him by name. Mr. Garrett, you are early today. Lisa is in the common room. Lisa Brennan was a woman in her mid-40s sitting in a wheelchair by a large window overlooking a courtyard. Half her head was shaved from surgery, angry red scars visible where they had operated on her skull. When she saw Daniel, her face lit up with a lopsided smile that broke my heart. Daniel, she said slowly, her words slurred but full of warmth. You came today. I always come, Daniel said gently, kneeling beside her wheelchair. Lisa, this is my mother Helen and my daughter Sarah. They need to ask you some questions about Robert Morrison. The change was immediate and dramatic. Lisa's smile vanished. Her eyes went sharp and focused in a way that startled me. For just a moment I glimpsed the intelligent, competent woman she had been before the accident. Morrison, she said. her voice hardening despite the slur. He did this to me. I know he did. Lisa, I said carefully, sitting across from her. Daniel told me you used to keep personal copies of important documents. Do you still have them? Did you give them to anyone before your accident? Lisa's eyes moved between us, calculating despite her injury. Why do you want to know? Because Morrison is trying to frame Daniel for the fraud you reported, I said. We need proof of what Morrison really did. We need your help. Daniel protected him, Lisa said, looking at my son. After Marcus. You lied for him. Daniel flinched. No. I was wrong. I'm so sorry, Lisa. Yes, Lisa's gaze held his. You were wrong. Then she looked at me. My husband has everything. I gave it all to Richard before I tried to report Morrison. I knew it was dangerous. I knew Morrison might retaliate. So I made copies of everything and told Richard to hide them somewhere safe. Insurance. Where? Sarah asked urgently, leaning forward. Where did your husband hide the documents? Safe, Lisa said, her face twisting with effort. A house. Basement safe. But Richard will not give them to you. He hates Daniel. Blames him for what happened to me. Why would he blame Daniel? I asked gently. 'Cause I told him, Lisa said simply. Before my accident, after I found out about Marcus Collins, I told Richard that Daniel knew about the hit and run and said nothing. I told him Daniel was Morrison's accomplice in covering it up. When I had my accident, Richard knew that if Daniel had spoken up months earlier about Marcus, Morrison might have been arrested before he could hurt me. Richard will not help Daniel. Will not even speak to him. Daniel stood abruptly, his face stricken with guilt. Should go. I'm sorry, Mom. This was a waste of time. We cannot get the documents if Lisa's husband refuses to help. Sit down, I said sharply. Daniel froze, surprised by my tone. I turned back to Lisa. Mrs. Brennan, I understand your husband's anger completely. But Daniel is not the enemy here. Morrison is. And if we do not stop him with solid evidence, he will keep hurting people. You know that better than anyone. Lisa studied me for a long moment with those sharp, damaged eyes. Then she reached out and pressed a button on her wheelchair's armrest. A phone screen appeared on a small display. Call Richard, she said clearly to the voice-activated system. The phone rang twice before a man answered. Lisa, is everything okay? Are you all right? Richard, I need you to do something for me, Lisa said, speaking slowly but clearly. Daniel Garrett is here. His mother and daughter too. They need the documents from the basement safe. The ones I gave you. Absolutely not. The man's voice was hard and angry. Lisa, we talked about this. Garrett is as guilty as Morrison. I am not helping him. No, Lisa interrupted firmly. He is a coward, not guilty. Not like Morrison. And if we do not help him now, Morrison wins completely. Richard, please. For me. Silence on the other end of the line. Long, tense, unbearable silence. Then if I do this, Richard's voice finally came through. I never want to see Garrett again. You understand me, Lisa. He stays away from you permanently. Yes, Lisa said, her eyes still on Daniel's face. We understand. After Lisa gave us her address and the safe combination, we said our goodbyes. As we turned to leave, Lisa caught my hand with surprising strength. Mrs. Garrett, she said softly, your son is weak. But he is not evil. Remember that when this is over. In the car driving to Lisa's house, Daniel was silent. His face a mask of shame and relief and fear all mixed together. Sarah was already mapping the route on her phone, and I sat thinking about how quickly everything had changed. This morning we had known about Marcus Collins and Jennifer's desperate family. Now we knew about Lisa Brennan, about federal fraud, about Morrison's willingness to destroy anyone who threatened him. We knew Daniel was about to be arrested for crimes he had witnessed but not committed. And we knew that somewhere in Richard Brennan's safe were documents that could change everything. If we could get to them before Morrison realized what we were doing. If Richard Brennan did not change his mind. If the FBI did not show up and arrest Daniel before we could build our case. Too many ifs. Too many ways this could all fall apart. Lisa's house was in a modest neighborhood on the edge of Lancaster. Small brick homes with neat lawns, minivans and driveways, the kind of place where families raised children and worked hard and tried to build decent lives. When we pulled up, a man was already waiting on the front porch with his arms crossed. Richard Brennan was tall and thin, maybe 50 years old, with gray hair and exhaustion carved into every line of his face. As Daniel approached, Richard's expression hardened into something like stone. "Stop right there," Richard said, holding up a hand. "You do not come in my house. Ever." Daniel stopped on the walkway. "I understand, sir. And I am truly sorry for everything." "Your sorry means nothing," Richard's voice could have cut glass. "My wife can barely remember our 25th wedding anniversary. She will never work again. She wakes up screaming from nightmares about a dark car coming at her. And you could have prevented all of it if you had spoken up about that little boy months earlier. You chose your career over my wife's life. That makes you almost as guilty as Morrison." "You are right," Daniel said quietly. "I was a coward. I am a coward. I failed Marcus and I failed your wife and I have to live with that forever." "Dad," Sarah started to protest, but I touched her arm, stopping her. Daniel needed to hear this. We all did. Richard descended the porch steps and stopped inches from Daniel's face. "Lisa thinks you deserve a second chance. My wife who can barely tie her own shoes anymore, who has to relearn how to read simple sentences, who will never be the brilliant woman I married. She thinks you are worth saving." He shook his head bitterly. "Think she is wrong. But I love her more than I hate you, Garrett. So here." He thrust a large manila envelope at Daniel. Everything Lisa copied before she reported Morrison. Bank records, emails, invoices, offshore account numbers, documentation of every illegal transaction. All of it. But I want you to understand something crystal clear. If you fail, if Morrison gets away with this, I will spend the rest of my life making sure everyone knows what kind of man you are. Your daughter, your mother, your neighbors, everyone you know. They will all learn that you are the coward who let my wife get destroyed." Daniel took the envelope with shaking hands. "Thank you, sir. I will not fail." "Do not thank me," Richard said coldly. "Let us win. Because that is the only thing that matters now. Putting Morrison in prison for the rest of his miserable life." He looked at me then, his eyes hard but not unkind. "Mrs. Garrett, your son is not a good man. But maybe you can make him better. God knows someone needs to try." He went back inside and closed the door with finality. We stood on the walkway in heavy silence. Then Daniel opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside were hundreds of pages. Spreadsheets showing financial transactions, bank statements from offshore accounts, email printouts, handwritten notes in Lisa's neat, precise script. Sarah immediately pulled out her phone and started photographing each page while I held them up to the light. "We need to get these to the FBI before they raid Morrison's office," she said. "Show them Morrison is the real criminal." "It is not that simple," Daniel said quietly. "These documents prove Morrison's guilt, but they also prove I knew about the fraud. I signed off on some of these fake invoices. My name is on some of these documents. I am still complicit. I could still go to prison. But as a witness who was coerced, not as the mastermind," I said firmly. "That is the difference between 2 years and 20 years, Daniel. You need a lawyer right now. Good one." Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket. He looked at the screen and his face went gray as ash. "It is Morrison," he said. "He wants to meet." "Do not answer," Sarah said immediately. "Do not even respond." "Have to," Daniel said. "If I do not, he will know something is wrong. He might panic and do something desperate. He might hurt someone else." The unspoken words hung in the air between us. Morrison might hurt Sarah. Or Jennifer and Marcus. Or Richard and Lisa. Or any of the people who knew his secrets. "What does he want?" I asked. Daniel opened the message and read aloud. "Come to my house immediately. We need to discuss our mutual problem and find a solution. Come alone." He looked up at us. "He probably wants me to sign a confession. Take the fall for the fraud in exchange for him not hurting Sarah or anyone else. That is how he operates. Threats wrapped in reasonable-sounding proposals." "You are not going," I said flatly. "Mom, I have to. If I do not show up, He will know I am planning something. And when Morrison feels threatened, people get hurt. You have seen what he does. If you go alone, Sarah said, her voice shaking, he will force you to sign whatever he wants. Or worse. I grabbed Daniel's phone from his hand. Sarah, call information. Get me the number for the FBI field office in Lancaster. Right now. What are you doing? Daniel asked. Playing offense instead of defense, I said, already dialing the number Sarah found. We are not running scared anymore. We are taking the fight to Morrison. A woman answered. FBI Lancaster field office. How may I direct your call? I need to speak to whoever is handling the Titan distribution fraud investigation. It is extremely urgent. I have evidence about Robert Morrison's criminal activities. One moment, please. I was put on hold. Daniel grabbed my arm. Mom, you cannot just call the FBI. We need a plan. We need a lawyer. We need to act before Morrison does, I interrupted. He thinks we are scared and desperate. He thinks he has won. We are about to prove him very wrong. A new voice came on the line. This is Special Agent Catherine Wells. You said you have information about the Titan distribution case. I explained quickly. Daniel's involvement, Morrison's threats, the documents we had just obtained from Lisa Brennan, and the meeting Morrison had demanded. Agent Wells listened without interrupting. When I finished, she spoke carefully. Mrs. Garrett, we have been investigating Titan distribution for 5 weeks. If your son has direct evidence of Mr. Morrison's involvement in the fraud scheme, we definitely want to see it. But I need to be very clear with you. Recording someone without their consent is illegal in Pennsylvania. Anything your son might record at this meeting would not be admissible in court. But you could listen, I said. You could know what Morrison says. And that would tell you where to look for legal evidence, would it not? Long pause. Then where is this meeting supposed to take place? Morrison's home. I do not have the address, but Daniel does. We have the address, Agent Wells said. Mrs. Garrett, I cannot officially authorize your son to wear a wire or record Mr. Morrison. But if your son happens to call someone and leave his phone connected during a conversation, and if that someone happens to record the call for their own personal reasons, well, we cannot control what private citizens choose to do. Understanding flooded through me. Thank you, Agent Wells. One more thing, she said, her voice turning serious. Tell your son to be very careful. If Morrison suspects he is being recorded, the situation could become dangerous very quickly. Morrison is facing decades in prison. Desperate men do desperate things. And Mrs. Garrett, we will be executing our warrant at Titan Distribution's headquarters at 6 o'clock this evening. If your son is not back from this meeting by then, call me immediately at this number. She gave me her direct number and I memorized it carefully before hanging up. Daniel and Sarah were staring at me with identical expressions of shock. Grandma, Sarah said slowly. Did you just get the FBI to help us entrap Morrison? I got them to listen, I corrected. Now we need to make sure Morrison says something worth hearing. Daniel, what will Morrison want from you at this meeting? Daniel thought for a moment. He will want me to take full responsibility for the fraud. Sign a prepared confession probably. He will threaten Sarah if I refuse to cooperate. He will promise that if I do sign, he will leave our family alone and take care of us financially while I am in prison. Will he keep that promise? I asked. No, Daniel said with absolute certainty. Once I am locked up and silenced, he will have no reason to keep any of us safe. We are all loose ends to him. He will find ways to tie up those loose ends permanently. Accidents, disappearances. He has done it before. The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. Then we need him to confess on recording, I said. We need him to admit what he did to Marcus and Lisa. We need him to threaten you explicitly and specifically. Can you make that happen? He is too smart, Daniel said. He never says anything directly incriminating. Everything is implications and suggestions and subtle threats. That is how he has gotten away with so much for so long. Then you make him angry, I said. You push his buttons until he drops the careful mask. What makes Robert Morrison lose control? Daniel considered this carefully. His ego. He thinks he is smarter than everyone else. cleverer, more sophisticated, more worthy of success. If you challenge that directly, if you make him think you have outsmarted him somehow, he gets furious. He cannot stand being bested. Then he will want to prove he is still in control, Sarah finished the thought. Which means he will tell you exactly what he plans to do. He will threaten you explicitly to prove he still has all the power. Exactly, I said. Daniel, can you do this? Can you stand in front of the man who destroyed your life and make him angry enough to drop his guard and confess? Daniel was silent for a long time. Then he straightened his shoulders and I saw something I had not seen in him for months. Determination. The man I had raised him to be. Yes, he said. Can do this. We spent the next 30 minutes preparing carefully. Sarah set up a recording app on Daniel's phone and tested the audio quality multiple times. We made sure the phone would stay connected even if tucked in Daniel's jacket pocket. I rehearsed with Daniel exactly what to say, how to provoke Morrison, when to push harder and when to pull back. Remember, I told him as he got ready to leave. Morrison thinks you are desperate and alone. He thinks he has already won. Let him believe that initially. Let him feel confident and superior. And then when his guard is down, you tell him you know about Lisa's hit and run. You tell him you have proof of everything. You tell him it is over. But I do not have proof anymore, Daniel said. He destroyed everything from my safety deposit box. He does not know that, I said. He will panic when you claim to have evidence. And when people panic, they make mistakes. They say things they should not say. I squeezed Daniel's hand tightly. You can do this. I believe in you completely. Your father would be so proud of the man you are becoming. Daniel's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded. He drove away toward Morrison's house and Sarah and I got in my car. We parked 3 blocks away from Morrison's address, close enough to reach quickly if needed, far enough that Morrison would not see us. Then Sarah called Daniel's phone. He answered and muted it immediately, tucking it carefully into his jacket pocket where the microphone would pick up everything. We could hear his car door closing, footsteps on pavement, a doorbell ringing. Then a voice I had never heard before but immediately hated. Smooth as oil and cold as ice. Daniel, thank you for coming so promptly. We have very important matters to discuss. Please come in. Door closed. Sarah and I sat in tense silence, listening to every sound through the phone connection. For the first few minutes it was all false pleasantries. Morrison offered Daniel a drink, asked about Sarah, made small talk about the weather. Daniel's responses were careful and measured, giving nothing away. Then Morrison's tone shifted subtly. I assume you have heard about the unfortunate federal investigation into our company. I heard, Daniel said carefully. A very unfortunate situation, Morrison continued. But I have developed a comprehensive solution to our mutual problem. I have prepared a detailed document explaining your central role in the company's financial irregularities. All you need to do is sign it and I will ensure your family is completely taken care of. Sarah's college education, your mother's health care as she ages, everything will be handled generously. You will serve perhaps 3 years in a minimum security facility. When you are released, there will be an excellent position waiting for you. And if I refuse to sign, Daniel asked quietly. Then I am afraid things become extremely complicated, Morrison said, an edge creeping into his smooth voice. Accidents happen every day, Daniel. You know that reality better than most people. Young Marcus Collins learned that lesson in a very unfortunate way. So did Lisa Brennan. I would hate for Sarah to have a similar educational experience. Such a bright, lovely girl with her whole life ahead of her. Sarah grabbed my hand, her grip crushing. On the recording, Daniel's voice was shaking slightly. You are threatening my daughter. I am simply explaining reality, Morrison said calmly. You have 2 clear choices. Protect Sarah by taking responsibility for the fraud. Or refuse and watch me systematically destroy everything you love. I have the resources, the connections, the determination. You have nothing. So what will it be, Daniel? This was the critical moment. I held my breath, praying Daniel would remember what to say. I have Lisa's documents, Daniel said quietly. The ones she copied before her accident. I know about the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. I know about the fake invoices to Sterling Manufacturing. I know you paid off the insurance investigator after Lisa's hit and run. I know everything, Morrison. Silence. Long and heavy and dangerous. Then Morrison laughed. A cold, cruel sound that made my skin crawl. Daniel. You are bluffing rather poorly. Lisa's documents were destroyed months ago. I made absolutely certain of that. Then how do I know about the shell company registered under Titan Services International? Daniel pressed. How do I know about the payment you made to Detective Frank Russell to close the investigation into Marcus's accident? How do I know you transferred $2.3 million to your account in Grand Cayman just last week? Another silence, longer this time. When Morrison spoke again, his voice had gone flat and deadly. Where did you get that specific information? Does it really matter where? What matters is that I have comprehensive documentation. And if anything happens to me or my family, it goes directly to the FBI. Every single page. Every single transaction. You are making a catastrophic mistake. Daniel. Morrison's voice was low and venomous now. A mistake you will regret for whatever remains of your very short life. No, Daniel said, and I could hear the strength growing in his voice. I made my mistake when I covered for you after you hit Marcus. When I watched you destroy Lisa and did nothing. I am done making mistakes, Morrison. So here is my offer to you. You turn yourself in to the FBI today. You confess to everything. Or I give them enough evidence to put you away for 30 years. The sound of sudden movement came through the phone. Chair scraping violently. Then Morrison's voice, no longer smooth, now raw with rage. You self-righteous little worm. You think you can threaten me. You think some documents mean anything at all. I own half the judges in this state. I have 3 senators on speed dial. The FBI can investigate until they are blue in the face. I will be drinking scotch in this study while they drown in paperwork and legal motions. Then you have nothing to worry about from me, Daniel said calmly. Marcus Collins, Morrison said. His voice dripping with contempt. That was simply an accident waiting to happen. A child riding near a busy street without proper supervision. And Lisa Brennan should have kept her mouth shut and accepted the generous severance I offered her. But no, she had to develop a conscience. She had to threaten everything I built. He paused and I could almost feel him stepping closer to Daniel, invading his space. Just like you are doing right now, Morrison continued. You had to grow a backbone at the most inconvenient possible time. But I made you, Daniel. I lifted you from nothing. I gave you opportunities you never deserved. And I can unmake you just as easily. You and your daughter. That pretty young girl with her whole bright future ahead of her. Tell me, does she check her mirrors carefully when she drives? Does she watch for cars running red lights? Such a terrible shame if something were to happen to her. Is that a direct threat? Daniel asked. It is an absolute promise, Morrison said coldly. You have exactly 24 hours to bring me every copy of those documents and sign my confession. If you do not, I will personally ensure that Sarah has a fatal accident. And this time, unlike Marcus, it will not be survivable. Do you understand me clearly? The recording went silent except for Daniel's harsh breathing. Then footsteps, a door opening, Daniel's voice from farther away. I will think very carefully about everything you said. The connection cut off abruptly. Sarah and I sat in my car, stunned into silence. Then Sarah started crying, great shaking sobs of fear and relief mixed together. I held her tightly, my own heart hammering, my mind racing. Morrison had just confessed on tape to 2 hit-and-runs and made an explicit death threat against Sarah. It was not admissible in court, but Agent Wells had been listening. Which meant the FBI knew everything now. My phone rang. Agent Wells. Mrs. Garrett, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. We heard everything. Can you bring your son and those documents to our office immediately? Yes, I said. We will be there in 30 minutes. Mrs. Garrett, she continued. Tell your son he did extremely well today. It took real courage to face Morrison like that and maintain his composure. We are going to make absolutely certain Morrison pays for what he has done. As we drove to meet Daniel, I felt fierce pride mixed with lingering terror. My son had stood up to a monster and survived. But monsters do not go down easily, and we had 24 hours before Morrison made good on his threat. 24 hours to put him away permanently before he could hurt anyone else. The FBI field office in Lancaster was a gray building that looked more like an insurance company than the headquarters of federal law enforcement. Agent Wells met us in the lobby, a woman in her mid-40s with sharp, intelligent eyes and an expression that revealed nothing. "Mr. Garrett, Mrs. Garrett, Sarah." She shook our hands briskly. "Please follow me." She led us to a conference room where two other agents waited, a younger man introduced as Agent Mitchell and an older woman named Agent Reyes. "Let us start with the documents," Agent Wells said, gesturing to the manila envelope Daniel clutched. For the next 2 hours we went through everything methodically. Lisa's copied records, Daniel's detailed account of Morrison's fraud scheme, the timeline of Marcus's accident and Lisa's hit and run. The agents listened intently, took extensive notes, asked pointed specific questions. Agent Mitchell photographed every single document while Agent Reyes cross-referenced them against their existing investigation files. "This is excellent work," Agent Wells said finally. "This corroborates everything we suspected but could not prove conclusively. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the falsified invoices. It is all documented here." Mrs. Brennan was extremely thorough. "But it is not enough to arrest him for the hit and runs," I said. "Is it?" Agent Wells's expression tightened. "For the financial fraud we have him completely. With these documents and our investigation, we can charge him with multiple counts of tax evasion, wire fraud, money laundering and conspiracy. He will serve 20 to 25 years minimum. But the hit and runs," she shook her head. "The recording you made is inadmissible evidence. It is fruit of the poisonous tree. Illegally obtained. We cannot use it in court. So he gets away with trying to kill 2 people," Sarah said, her voice rising. "With threatening to murder me." "I did not say that." Agent Wells leaned forward. "What I said is we cannot use the recording in court directly. But we can use it to guide our investigation toward admissible evidence." Morrison mentioned paying off Detective Frank Russell to close the investigation into Marcus Collins's accident. "That is bribery and conspiracy. We can prove that if we find the right paper trail." He also mentioned having judges and senators corrupted. "That opens multiple avenues for investigation." "How long will that take?" Daniel asked quietly. "Weeks at minimum. Possibly months to build solid cases." "We do not have months," I said firmly. "We have 24 hours before Morrison makes good on his threat against Sarah." "Which is precisely why," Agent Wells said, "we are accelerating our timeline significantly. We are executing the warrant on Titan Distribution in 2 hours at 4 o'clock instead of 6. We will seize all company records, computers, servers, everything. Morrison will not be expecting us this early. The element of surprise might shake loose additional evidence or witnesses." "And in the meantime," Sarah asked, fear clear in her voice, "what happens to us?" "You stay visible and safe," Agent Wells said. "Morrison is intelligent enough to know that if anything happens to any of you now, he becomes the obvious prime suspect. The recording proves his intent even if we cannot use it in court. He will not move against you while our investigation is active and public. Unless he panics," Daniel said. "You do not know him like I do, Agent Wells. When Morrison feels cornered, when he thinks he is losing control, that is when he becomes most dangerous and unpredictable. That is when people get hurt or disappear." Agent Wells studied Daniel for a long moment. "Mr. Garrett, I need to be completely frank with you about your situation. Your cooperation today has been valuable and we appreciate it. But you are not walking away from this situation clean. You knowingly participated in financial fraud for nearly a year. You falsified documents, signed off on illegal transactions, lied to investigators. The U.S. attorney will want to charge you criminally." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah grabbed Daniel's hand tightly. "However," Agent Wells continued, You are also a valuable cooperating witness. If you testify against Morrison, if you help us build an airtight case that guarantees his conviction, the U.S. attorney might offer a plea deal. Reduced charges, minimal prison time, possibly even probation if we build a strong enough case and you are genuinely remorseful. How minimal? Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. 2 to 3 years, most likely in a minimum security facility. Could be as little as 18 months with good behavior and full cooperation. Or probation with extensive community service if the U.S. attorney is feeling generous. Sarah made a small wounded sound. Daniel squeezed her hand. His face a mask of acceptance. I will testify, he said. Whatever you need from me. Whatever it takes to put Morrison away permanently. Good. Agent Wells stood. We will be in touch with specific instructions. In the meantime, I need all of you to go home and act completely normal. Do not contact Morrison under any circumstances. Do not tell anyone about this meeting or the investigation. And for the love of God, do not try to investigate anything on your own. Let us do our jobs. We are very good at them. We left the FBI office as the late afternoon sun slanted through the city streets. The drive back home felt surreal, like we had stepped through a doorway into a different world and could not quite find our way back to the old one. Daniel dropped Sarah and me at my house, then headed to his own apartment to wait for news from the FBI. Sarah sat at my kitchen table, her face pale and drawn with exhaustion and fear. He is really going to prison, she said quietly. Dad is really going to prison for trying to do the right thing. Maybe, I said. Or maybe the U.S. attorney will be more lenient than Agent Wells indicated. But yes, sweetheart. Your father will face consequences for his choices. That is the price of the decisions he made, even if those decisions came from fear. He was trying to protect us, Sarah said fiercely. Morrison threatened to take me away, to destroy Dad's career and reputation. What was he supposed to do? Tell the truth earlier, I said gently. Stand up when Marcus got hit instead of waiting and letting the lies compound. I know you want to defend him, Sarah. I know you love him. But part of loving someone means holding them accountable when they fail. Your father failed badly. He knows it. And now he has to make it right, whatever that costs him. Sarah's phone suddenly buzzed. She looked at the screen and her face went completely white. Grandma, it is a text from an unknown number. She showed me the message. Tell your father he made a serious mistake. 24 hours. The clock is ticking and I never bluff. My blood turned to ice. I grabbed my phone and called Agent Wells immediately. He is already making contact, I said when she answered. Threatening text to Sarah from an unknown number. He is not waiting. Forward it to me right now, Agent Wells said. We will trace it immediately. Mrs. Garrett, I want you and Sarah to stay together tonight. Lock all your doors and windows. Keep your phones fully charged. If you see anything suspicious at all, any unfamiliar cars, anyone hanging around your neighborhood, anyone at all, you call 911 first and then you call me directly. After I hung up, Sarah and I sat in my kitchen as the afternoon faded into evening. I made tea that neither of us drank. Sarah tried to focus on homework but gave up after 10 minutes. We were both simply waiting for something to happen. Something terrible or something hopeful. We did not know which. At 7 o'clock my phone rang. Daniel. Mom, the FBI raided Titan Distribution, he said without preamble. It is all over the local news. They arrested 4 executives, seized dozens of boxes of documents and computer equipment. But Morrison was not there. Ice flooded my veins. What do you mean he was not there? He did not come to the office today, Daniel said, fear clear in his voice. His secretary says he called in sick this morning. The FBI went to his house with the warrant. He is not there either. His car is gone. They think he ran, Mom. He knew somehow that we went to the FBI and he ran. I thought of the threatening text message. Of Morrison's promise to make Sarah have an accident. If he was on the run, desperate and cornered and furious, what would he do? Daniel, get over here right now, I said. We need to stay together where we can protect each other. I'm already in my car, he said. The FBI put out an alert for Morrison's vehicle. But Mom, he could be anywhere. He has money and connections. He could disappear or he could come after Sarah first before he runs. This is all my fault. If I had just acted sooner, if I had turned him in months ago. It is Morrison's fault, I interrupted firmly. Robert Morrison made the choice to hurt people, to threaten a child. That is on him entirely, not you. Just get here safely. But as I hung up, I wondered if we truly would be safe. Morrison had evaded the FBI, which meant he was either running for good or preparing to strike one last devastating time. A man with nothing to lose and everything to avenge. The waiting was pure agony. Sarah and I checked every door and window lock twice. I found my late husband's old baseball bat in the garage and kept it near the front door. Sarah sat rigid on the couch with her phone, jumping at every small sound outside. When Daniel finally arrived 20 minutes later, we all breathed slightly easier. Safety in numbers, or at least the illusion of it. Agent Wells called again, Daniel said, pacing my living room. They have been going through the seized documents from Titan Distribution. They found evidence of payments to a private investigator named Victor Torres. Someone Morrison hired regularly to handle problems and make them disappear. They think this Torres might have been directly involved in Lisa's hit and run. Maybe even Marcus's. Can they prove it? I asked. They are working on it intensely. But here is the concerning part. They found recent payments to Tor.